The Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by BASF.
I'm Amber Bell, and this is Real Agriculture. I'm here today for today's episode of Pulse School with Mike Palmier of MNP AgIntellect. We're going to be talking about why some weeds are so hard to kill. I think that's a question on a lot of growers' minds. So let's dive into it. Why are they?
Well, there's a lot of different reasons, right? So in this field that we're set up at today, we've got some overwinter perennial weeds. So the reason why they're really hard to kill is because they're larger, because they've been growing since last fall. They're also extremely hardy, and they have large root systems, taproot, which helps them to overwinter. And so in those types of instances, they're really hard to kill because we've got to get down to the root of that plant, and they're much larger than actually meets the eye because the root's been developing for a long period of time. A lot of this new growth just emerged again this spring. So visually, maybe a little smaller, you don't think it's as big of an issue, but underneath the ground it's actually a much more mature plant. So that's one of those reasons. Another one, let's say we talk about kochia, is when that emerges, it's very small, right? It's like a dime-sized plant. It's completely fuzzy all over the place, right? And so when it's fuzzy like that, it's got all these real small hairs on that plant. Small droplets at times, if you have poor coverage, aren't going to get all the way to that leaf surface and get into that plant to kill it. As well, kochia tends to be very heavily populated, very thick in specific areas, so it almost grows on top of each other. So coverage is even that much more important. So every weed's kind of got a bit of a story on why it's easy or hard to kill, and those would be the main ones. Another one, I guess, something that's actually relatively simple to kill in a lot of years, is like a small wild oat or a volunteer wheat or something like that. Early on in the season, when they come out, they're just one leaf, and they actually are hard to kill when they're one leaf because there's nowhere for the droplet to sit.
Right.
It just slides off that leaf. And so in those cases, especially when you have thick populations of those types of weeds, you want to wait until that second leaf starts popping out before you really want to spray it.
So unlike a lot of weeds like kochia, let's say, it's not a get out there the moment you see a leaf up.
Yeah, I mean, kochia it's the same with anything. You don't want to get it too big, but you also want to get it big enough. There's a middle ground there because, say with kochia, you obviously want to get that small. You want to control that weed and spray it before it's 3 inches in height, because then it starts really branching out and the roots get a lot more vigorous. And also, but we want to wait as long as we can to a point, because there's also likely more flushes coming. So if we spray too early, then we're likely going to have to go in again, or maybe spray a few passes. And in the case of a pulse crop, we're on pulse school,
Yes.
You have very limited opportunities in crop. For kochia, you really have no opportunities because there's nothing that will control kochia within a lentil crop, and even in a pea crop. A bazagran, a benazone type product will just have suppression. So you also got to get it very small. And the last thing you want to do is spray that herbicide too early in a pea crop, because then it'll have much more, a larger chance to be able to establish itself afterwards and cause havoc.
Right. And how much of an impact is herbicide resistance having on how hard these weeds are to kill?
We're going to keep on talking about kochia because, I mean, that's the number one that we fight in our area in west central Saskatchewan for weed resistance, for herbicide resistance, because we have confirmed, I mean, everything's group 2 resistant. We've been assuming that everything is group 9 or glyphosate resistant for the last half a dozen years. We also have a couple of cases of group 14 resistance pop up over the last couple of years. So we're really starting to build up our resistances. I haven't visually seen group 4 resistance, but the surveys would say that that's also in the area. So now we have 2, 4, 9, and 14 resistance. We've got a real problem. When you think about also going into a pulse crop, a lot of times we want to apply a residual herbicide in order to get ahead of that kochia.
Right.
And again, that's one of our only control options. Well, group 14 products make up a lot of those types of products, and if we have resistance to those, that's a real issue. Because now we're stuck with a group 15, or we can still use a group 3. But now we're really narrowed into just a couple of herbicides, and that's going to be a big problem.
So what are some of the management practices that you're recommending to pulse producers to kind of manage those hard to kill weeds?
So I guess there's a few things, and one is I would say don't force a pulse on ground that's not ready for it. And I would say that's the biggest problem that I see out there, is that you have a rotation. This is your pulse rotation. You put it on this field. Meanwhile, in the 3 or 4 or 5 years, or hopefully that long, between pulse crops, you haven't done a great job of controlling the weeds that are out there. Maybe didn't do a fall spray last year, which I think is really important going into pulses if you have anything growing. And so now you're putting those pulses, which have limited weed control options, into a field that's going to really push that, and that's the makings of a weed wreck.
And when do you know that that's that limit that, hey, maybe I shouldn't put pulses in this year, or maybe I should put pulses in? Like, where's that breaking point?
Every farm has their own breaking point. I think, for me as an agronomist, it's a conversation with that individual farm to understand how much they can put up with. If you're putting on a residual herbicide like a Fierce in the fall, realistically to expect 90% control, 95 is like excellent. So if you can look out there and see the kochia that you have and realize that if they're a big plant, they can disperse 20,000 seeds per plant, and you think, well, if I don't control 5% of those plants, what's that going to look like, and am I comfortable with that?
Right.
So everybody's threshold is a little bit different.
And are there certain pulse crops that might be able to compete better against certain weeds?
I mean, if you know that you're going to potentially have some kochia, peas are a better option than lentils, because we can use a sulfentrazone as a residual herbicide, which is very, very strong on kochia. We have benazone in Viper or Viper type products, which has suppression on kochia, while we don't have that in lentils. So peas would do a much better job for kochia. But at the same time, we have to look at the whole spectrum. In our area, in our geographic area as well, we have group 2 resistant wild mustard. We also have group 2 resistant stinkweed, right? And so that also is a challenge in the lentils. So in our area, we tend to spray a lot more metribuzin or like a Sencor type product to be able to control those weeds. We can do the same thing in peas, but also, again, that benazone type product is also going to control that. So it's a moving target, and the market will probably speak to what guys really should want, what they want to put in the ground, over maybe some agronomic considerations at times too.
Right, and probably just speaking with your agronomist and making sure that you're on the same page.
Yeah, I'm biased. I always think that people should speak to agronomists.
Right.
And the nice part is we see a lot of fields and a lot of geography, so we get a really good feel for what works and what doesn't on many farms.
So if you were to summarize top 3 things the producers can do to combat some of the hard to kill weeds, what would they be?
Fall herbicide spray so that you don't have overwintering weeds. A residual spray herbicide to get ahead of your kochia and other problem weeds. And choose the right fields. Don't force pulses on a field that doesn't belong.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much. And that was Mike Palmier on Real Agriculture.